Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we will be continuing our PortSwigger Academy SQL injection path. Today we're going to do the SQL injection attack, listing the database contents on non-Oracle databases. So the description reads, this lab contains a SQL injection vulnerability in the product category filter. The results from the query are returned in the application's response. So you can use a union attack to retrieve data from other tables. The application has a login function and the database contains a table that holds usernames and passwords. You need to determine the name of the table and the column it contains, then retrieve the contents of the table to obtain the username and password for all users. And to solve the lab, we need to log in as the administrator user. So I'm going to click on the Access the Lab button, hop over to my Kali Linux VM, and get started working on this lab. Alright, so I have the lab pulled up in Firefox inside of my Kali VM, and I have network traffic going into Burp Suite. We know that the category parameter is vulnerable to SQL injection based off the description. What I'm going to go ahead and do is just right click, send this repeater, and we'll get into the meat of this lab. So I'm just going to hit send here. I just want to see a 200, make sure there's no issues and everything is working just fine. And like before, we know if we put a single quote in the parameter and we get a 500, that's a decent indicator of SQL injection, or the potential of SQL injection. So we put a single quote in, the back end didn't know what to do with that single quote and it breaks everything. And if we put in a second single quote, we are now getting a 200. However, we can see in the render or the response that we're not getting any sort of data back. And our next step would be to do something like order by 2, tac space tac for a comment. So we're going to say order by 2. So this is going to determine how many columns are in our current table that we're working with. And this is going to be used as a comment, so escape anything afterwards. So realistically, we're telling the backend to only pay attention to what we're adding. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight everything, Control U, that URL encodes everything. So now we have plus signs between where all the spaces were. So now if we hit send and we get a 200, let me click on raw again. We get a 200, we know everything is fine. And like before, if we increase this to 3, we are going to get a 500. We're only working with 2 columns in this table. I'll hit send, and if we scroll down, we can observe something like a description and a title indicating what 2 columns we're working with. And instead of doing order by, let me go ahead and remove this and do union select null tac space tac, and then this is going to represent how many columns. So the each null, since we know that there were 2, we'll do a null and a null here. I'm going to highlight all of this again, Control U, URL encode it, hit send, and down here nothing's changed. We do see some additional markup. If we change this to version, we know that this is a non-Oracle database, so this function should work. We don't have to do anything like from dual. Scroll down and we do see the version of PostSQL down here. So our next step is to now get the listing of tables that we can interact with. What we can do is, instead of saying version, we'll do table underscore name plus from plus information underscore schema tables. So we're saying select null and then table name from information schema tables. If this works, we should actually get all the tables. Send 200, and then yeah, that looks like a list of tables that we can interact with. We're looking for a users table, so if we search for users, we found one right here. I'm going to go ahead and rename this tables just for reference. That way if I make a mistake later, I'm not having to like Control Z and revert back to this. And I'm going to right click, send this to repeater, and hit send, and just use this as kind of like a backup. So now that we know the name of the table we're going to be targeting, we need to get the columns so that we can do select that column name, and that column name being the username and the password from that table that we just saw. So that's going to look like instead of saying table name information schema, so let's get rid of all of this. Column underscore name from information schema dot columns, where, and I'm doing the pluses to URL encode myself so I don't have to worry about that later. Table underscore name, and then I'm going to do an equals, and then this should actually be a plus, and then 3D should be the equals for URL encoding that. And then we need two single quotes in here because we need the pass in this name. So let me double check that I did this correct and I didn't fat finger something, but let's see. So null column name from information schema dot columns, where the table name equals, and then that user's GBD, whatever this is. And just for reference, this is always going to be different, so don't just copy what I currently have and expect this to work. You need to pull out whatever the user's table name is in here for this to continue. So let me see if this works. A 200, so I don't have any issues, looks like. And now I see like username and password columns in here. Now I'm gonna like rename this to user column names. Again, I like to do this just in case I make a mistake as I'm performing this attack and I don't want to have to Control Z or revert back. I have a working understanding of the table to get all the tables, and now to get the username and the password for that table. So now I'm going to right click, send this to repeater, and I think we can finish it up here by extracting out the username and the password. So instead of this section in here, I'm going to go to the comments. All I should need to do then is after this is, if I want to get that username, I need here, so copy this. So that's what I want to actually pull in. So select null, the username from, and then I need that table. So we need this, so copy this. So let me URL decode this entire thing just so you can see what this looks like. So this should be username from the user's GBNO, whatever that random string is, and then comments to escape everything. So if this works, so Control U, this should obtain all of the users. So at 200, so that worked. Administrator, I see that in there. Carlos, so that's good. We could then like convert that to say, let's get the passwords as well. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to actually try to concatenate the username and the password together. So if I do pipe, so let me see. This should be kind of a pipe to add a colon in there. So it should show username, colon, and then password instead of just Carlos or administrator. So let me hit send and see if I did this correctly. So 200, scroll down. So administrator, and then there's the password. So let me copy this. My account, administrator, try not to spell that wrong, paste that password. We're logged in and we have solved the lab. So that's awesome. We took it another step from the last lab where we were just getting that version. Through this one, we were able to abstract all the table names and then pluck out the column names from that table. And then with that, we could formulate a query to get the username and the password for the administrator. So, but that's all I have for today. Hopefully you found some value in this video. Be on the lookout for the next PortSwigger Academy SQL injection lab tutorial. Have a wonderful day and happy hacking. Take care.